So it's finally time that we get the very first sneak peeks into the political maps of Asia. We've got 2 maps today out of possibly 5 main maps that we're going to see. We got the Indian subcontinent in all of its entirety, as well as we have the Persian map that we're going to check after we check the Indian parts. And next week we're going to see all of the Mongolian parts from the Golden Horde all the way into Yuan, or at least Northern Yuan, which makes me think that we're only going to have Southeast Asia as a separate map and Japan. And that's going to be the entirety of Asia. And then we're going to have probably one dev diary for North, South America, and Australia, because there's like 20 countries in between those areas, so there's not going to be separate dev diaries for that. And I reiterate for the 9th millionth time, this is perfect timing if they plan on making the announcement for EU5 around the end of this year and releasing the game mid of next year. And when I'm right about this, you guys better come back to this video and say, Ludi, you were right about it. I know. If I'm wrong, just forget about it. Don't worry about that part, okay? Now, guys, in 1337, the Indian subcontinent is pretty much dominated by the Delhi Sultanate. As Pavia says here, Delhi is ruled by Muhammad bin Tughlaq, who was of Turkic origin, and he was primarily an Urdu speaker, as were the majority of the ruling class of the Delhi Sultanate. Now, the reality is, guys, that the Delhi Sultanate was on its last leg. Technically, it did not fully collapse, but in 1337, it is basically in the middle of the collapse. It had already lost sizable amounts of land, and it will continue to lose land up until the death of Muhammad here. I think it was in 1350 something, 1351 maybe. He ascended in 1325, ruled for 26 years. Yeah, 1351. So in his period, he made some massive mistakes. I'm talking some of the worst mistakes imaginable. I think Pavia also mentioned something about this. I'm not sure if he does actually. Let's see if we scroll down. Muhammad bin Tughlaq extending through the Indo-Gangic plains, including Bengal and to the south throughout Deccan. There we have its toughest contender, Vijayanagar, a country that is bulwark of Hinduism. Other important countries around it are Orissa and Sindh, but much smaller countries generally surround Delhi. You might wonder how it would be possible to stop Delhi from completely controlling the region. For this, 2 things are affecting its capacity to achieve it. The first is the base game mechanic. Ruling over so many cultures, religions will low control very hard. The second is a situation that involves the fall of the Sultanate. If Delhi wants to succeed, it will have to fight back against rebellions, which involves the potential independence of the Bengalese countries or newborn ones such as Bahmanis and multiple Indian states around it. So speaking of the Bahmanis, the area in the center here, which would eventually become the Bahmanis and which would rule over most of the Deccan area, sprang out of the Delhi Sultanate in 1347. So just 10 years after the start date, I would expect to see an event that would make it possible for the Bahmanis to come about. And of course, as Pavia just mentioned, the Bengal broke away from Delhi. The various Rajput areas broke away. Malwa broke away from Delhi as well. And albeit initially one of the cousins of Muhammad, which broke away, was slayed alive, skinned, and then obviously killed, it still eventually led to Malwa becoming an independent nation. Despite all the flaying, it did not impress the Malwans much, as Shania Twain would say. Now, why did I mention earlier that Muhammad is the issue for this? Well, it's not just Muhammad. The reality is that, as Pavia says, there were a lot of different cultures, there were a lot of different religions, but actually Muhammad was very accepting towards other religions, which was unlike the previous Delhi Sultanate rulers, which were very strict with abiding only to Islam. Now, that being said, obviously him being more tolerant towards Hinduism and Jains and so on doesn't make much of a difference when the majority of the core of the high-ranking generals of the Delhi Sultanate were very much so against those religions, and they were the ones ruling the various regions. In fact, most of the breakaway states were, quite frankly, just generals of the Delhi Sultanate. One of the generals of the Delhi Sultanate actually established the Bahmani Sultanate as well. He was a North Indian Urdu-speaking Chad lord that had been under Muhammad for quite a while. Pavia mentions here that the greatest challenge is going to be Vijayanagar. Let's talk a little bit about that, right? Because Vijayanagar was actually established in 1336, 1 year prior to our start date. So I wouldn't say that they would be at the start date, at least, the biggest challenge. The inception of Vijayanagar is a little bit complicated depending on who you ask. There's a few theories. The main one would be that it was established by two generals of the Hoysala, the kingdom we see right to the south of Vijayanagar, after it got defeated by the Delhi Sultanate. The Hoysalas got defeated by them. Eventually, Vijayanagar integrates Hoysala in most of the southern parts of India and will be basically a bastion of Hinduism in the south parts of the Indian subcontinent until it got completely wiped out, and the city of Vijayanagar itself was looted for 6 months continuously. Speaking of, the city of Vijayanagar was the second biggest city in the world after Beijing at one point in the Middle Ages, well, Indian Middle Ages, the 1500s. Despite being that big, after the Vijayanagars lost a war against like 6 different Islamic successor states, once Bahmanis collapsed and it broke away into multiple little entities, they all banded together, attacked Vijayanagar, and after, I forgot his name, Rama something, was Ramaraya maybe, was decapitated. The army just shattered into pieces. A couple of generals betrayed the Vijayanagars, turncoated, and then people were just slaughtered, basically 500,000 population or something like that, which is insane. Goes to show that it's not necessarily about the numbers in most cases in history. It's about the conviction of the people fighting. Now, I'm not going to go over every single little kingdom here because I'm sure most of you don't know these kingdoms. Even I don't know that many of them. So if you think there's something wrong with the map itself, politically speaking, let me know. I think there are some things that are not really accurate though. Like for example, in Tibet, it should not be unified in 1337. Why do I say that? Well, the reality is that Muhammad, one of the things that he did is he had a massive army. He had 370,000 units that he paid for 1 year until he realized after 1 year he doesn't have money to pay for them, even though he taxed the shit out of people, which is also why we had so many rebellions around the Indian subcontinent. It led to the various areas breaking away from the Delhi Sultanate. So one of the contributing factors is Muhammad's massive 370,000 army that he eventually disbanded after he realized that he cannot sustain it. He still managed to keep 100,000 that he used in an attempt to invade China. He wanted to invade Yuan. I don't know what the hell was wrong with this guy, but once he got into Tibet, he fought against, should be somewhere around here in the southern parts of Tibet, which was an entity unto itself that I do not see it on the map itself. And also Madurai was a breakaway state that in 1335 broke away from the Delhi Sultanate, and then in 1336 Vijayanagar came to be, but we don't know for sure if they already annexed Madurai in 1336 or if they annexed Madurai a little bit later. So the Madurai Sultanate was a rebellious state from the Delhi Sultanate in the area around Madurai in South India, and eventually Vijayanagar took them over. So I'm not sure. What do you guys think? Especially my Indian viewers, if you have any sources on this, I'd like to get a look at that because I'm curious to know if you think Madurai should be on the map or if it should not be at the map at the start. It was very short-lived, but still, I like to see the map to be historically accurate, of course. Dynasty map mode, it's pretty much mostly Tukla. That's it in most of India, and we have, of course, local dynasties in the other areas. Locations-wise, there are a huge amount of... Guys, this is probably the most dense area I've seen in the most recent dev diaries, for sure. Did not expect it to have that many locations, and I'm assuming all of these locations are going to have super high population too. Check this out. So we can see the more detailed map mode. Look how many locations there are here, man. This is insane. This tells me that the Indian subcontinent itself is going to be super hard to unify. It's not like in EU4 where you have like roughly 200, 300 provinces. You're going to have like thousands. I'm guessing this is probably like 2,000-3,000 locations, which is just wild. And we also have the dev map mode from the previous dev diary, which shows that all of North India is super high development, and the Bengal area is like the second highest development in the world after the Chinese areas, which is insane. So conquering India is gonna be a massive challenge in EU5. This is the province map mode. Quite a few provinces. It's actually surprisingly similar to EU4, most of these, but of course they've been chopped up into smaller pieces to make way for the added amount of locations that need to be added to its own province. The area map mode as well. Punjab, pretty significant in the north. Doab, Awadh, Rajputana, where we have the various Rajput kingdoms that will spring out of Delhi, have already started springing out of Delhi actually. Malwa as well here. Bengal region. The terrain map mode, it is pretty much a split between tropical on the east coast, arid in the northwest, and we have subtropical in the northern parts of India, which is where the really high development is, coincidentally, and we got more arid in the central parts of South India India, with more tropical in Ceylon or Sri Lanka. Topography, we've got the northern parts pretty much flatlands with a little bit of hills and a couple of mountains sprinkled in between the central part. There's more hills and mountains as well as a little bit of plateau in the south part of India. And we've got a lot of farmlands around the heartlands of the Delhi Sultanate, which makes it pretty obvious that that did contribute to Delhi being as successful as it was, right? And then we have more grasslands in the north and in the Bengal areas, again areas with really high development. We got jungles in the north central eastern parts, if that's even a thing. We got sparse, which is technically steppes, I guess, and then we got more farmlands in the southern parts here, as well as actually more farmlands right next to the jungles. Development map mode, because apparently we have that as a new map mode from now on with the dev diaries. We can see the north has significant development, Bengal as well. This has actually been redone, hasn't it? A new map mode is born and you have development. Yeah, this is different. Oh my god, they changed the development from the last dev diary. Oh, so they actually lowered a little bit parts of here with development, didn't they? They did. Okay, that's good. It means they're listening to people's feedback, because people were actually complaining about pretty high development in certain areas and very little development in other areas. The harbor map mode as well. This is a lot of maps. Holy snap. And natural harbors, 100% ones. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Whoa, that's a lot. Especially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them in South India alone means that Vijayanagar is going to have potential to become a pretty significant colonial and naval power. The culture map mode as well. Oh, this is interesting. Let me zoom in for this one. So we've got in the south the classic Kannadiga, Tamil, Telugu main cultures with Sinhalese and Tamil as well in the island of Sri Lanka. We have Maratha in the central part of India. We've got Orissa, Bengali in the northeast, Awadhi, Braji. So we've got the Hindu different cultures very much so disunited, not one conglomerate of Hindus in the north. Interesting. Wonder why they did that. Is it that in 1337 there was no actual unified Hindus and was just like smaller different types of Hindus? I'm guessing that's what this is trying to show us here. There's a lot of Punjabis though. Holy snaps. I guess playing as a Punjabi primary culture nation is going to be pretty cool in EU5. The religion map mode, it's pretty much all Hindu boys. We've got small amounts of Buddhists, and we've got well, actually quite a few amounts of Buddhists. We actually have animists as well in the south here next to the Buddhists. That's interesting. And we have Mahayana Buddhists as well in Sindh. Wow, that's actually pretty impressive that they managed to wipe out all of those people in 100 years. Holy snap. Because in EU4 we don't have any Mahayanas, do we now? Also significantly more animists in the northeast than we have in 1444 start date as well. And what is this? The bluish thing. Sakani? What is that? I cannot make that out. If you guys can make it out, let me know in the comment section what that is, because I'm actually curious. There's quite a lot of this bluish thing mixed in with the Mahayanas. Maybe it's a different type of Buddhist. We actually have information here. Mahayana is a majority in Sindh, although that's not completely exact, as an earlier form of Buddhist was practiced here. We're also not 100% convinced about it being a majority, as some sources and accounts set the Islamization of the region to be completed under the Ghaznavids in the 11th and 12th century, whilst others delay it to the 14th century. We followed the later approach, but we're open to feedback in this specific matter. I don't think that within 100 years this entire region would be converted to Islam. I genuinely think it would take longer than that, because historically any single religious flip took significantly longer, unless there's accounts of genocides having happened. So I don't know, but I wouldn't say go from one extreme to the other and turn all of that Muslim. Maybe just make it half and half. That would be more accurate, right? More plausible as well. They've already added some new animist types of religions. Satsanavi, the traditional religion of the Thai people, Sanamahism, the religion of the Métis people, and the light blue stripes to the north is Bon religion. Oh my god, dude. They're finally splitting the animists into actual different religions. They need to do a new religious map mode in like 2-3 months, because I'm curious to see what we get new, because this is completely different from what we had in the initial religious map that they released like a couple of months ago. Now, raw materials, the first thing that strikes me is that there's a lot of iron. Holy snaps, there's a lot of iron here. Like, we have more iron in India than in any other area I've seen so far. Like, this thing is literally riddled with iron. We also have pretty much everything aside from that, of course. Lumber everywhere, cotton, rice, wheat. It's an amalgamation of absolutely anything you need is within India. Elephants apparently is it's a trade good, so maybe we're gonna get elephant units. That would be cool to see. Gems everywhere too. Silk everywhere also. These are the main markets right now. We've got Delhi, Kambat, Varanasi, Chittagongadu, and Pulicat and Calicut. Pulicat. I think my fellow Romanian Armenians are really gonna like this market. It's a very stiff market, let's say. Hey boys, check out the population map mode. There's more population in the Delhi Sultanate itself than pretty much all of Europe. We got 41 million population just in the Delhi Sultanate. And then we got like 1.3 million in this little small schnapple dupe, 2.8 in this one, 2.4 in this one. Every single entity here has a couple million population, which is wild, dude. 2.4 million in Vijayanagar and another 3.1 in the future Vijayanagar area, which I'm assuming Vijayanagar is going to get some sort of ability to integrate the southern neighbors pretty easily. Altogether, Vijayanagar area has like 8 million, 9 million, actually 10 with the south, I guess, complete south. 95 million pop within India. Holy mother of God. Delhi is the second largest country in the world by population after Yuan. Now, don't go anywhere because we also have the Caucasus and Persia. This was released a couple of days back. I didn't really talk about it too much, didn't give it its own video since we've already seen this before in like sneak bits from other maps. So I thought might as well just talk about the updates to it, I guess. We do have here in essence the main one being Jalayirids, Chobanids, a few other entities that eventually will get integrated into the Timurid lands. Timur himself having been born on the 8th of April 1336 in the Chagatai kingdom, Chagatai Khanate, really Khaganate, and eventually he would conquer most of the Persian parts and the Afghani parts, as we know from the big red blob that we see in 1444. So all that you see here is basically just temporary. The black and the white sheep would also march into here and conquer parts of the Iraqi bit, Caucasus, and so on. Georgia is pretty big, actually. Armenia is also on the map here. Take a closer look. Shirvan's basically the same. Nothing's changed here for 100 years. Ghazi Communes don't exist anymore. Instead, we still have Avaria that are the vassals of the Ghazi Communes in EU4. But instead of Ghazi Communes, we got Tarki and Lekia. We also have the Alania, Durdzukenia. These are basically Ossetian people, if I'm not mistaken. Trebizond pretty big and strong over there. Then we've got some different Seljuk states, Seljuk successor states, I guess. I'm trying to see if there's any changes into Arabia, but I'm not seeing any actual changes. They have yet to change also Ormuz to the proper Hormuz, which would be the English version, as they said they would. Makran's pretty big actually here. Holy snaps. We all know Makran from Wiki 3, right? Javier mentions that the Ilkhanate is still alive, but only in name, the real power being hosted by the Jayarids, who are overlords of some of the neighbors, including the Chobanids and the Eretnids. Other countries such as Gurgan, Kartids, Mufazafids are also struggling to get hegemony over the region. The strongest power in the Caucasus is the Kingdom of Georgia, although the region is quite fragmented amongst its polities. That's because just 100 years prior, the Mongols completely destroyed everybody in the Caucasus. The Georgians included got conquered by the Mongols pretty easily, and the Mongols built a fortress in Tbilisi, Narikala, which is one of the more famous touristic attractions in Tbilisi. The main purpose of it was technically to enforce Mongol rule over the area for a particular period of time. That purpose obviously changed as time progressed. Now we do have here an Holy Roman Empire style sort of thing in the Middle East. Speaking of the Ilkhanates, you might have wondered why it's not a unified tag. What they're doing is they're making the Ilkhanates an international organization, which is a new mechanic, as you would imagine, in EU5 that we talked about before. And these are in essence the members of this particular international organization that make up the supposed Ilkhanate. This is the culture map mode. Let's start with the most interesting one. Georgia, Armenian, Azeri, Adhari. Holy schnabadobs. Look at how many Armenians we got here, boys. That is a big change. So this is, I think, due to feedback Paradox has received. We've got more Kurdish people, more Armenians. Actually, no, we have a little bit less Kurds and more Armenians in this area, which is, in my opinion, a lot more accurate. We also have Laz more in the northern parts, Zvan, Alan, Balkar, Nak, Adhari, Kurdish, Luri, Iraqi, Persians in the main areas here, Afghanis. See, this is something I don't agree with, though. Afghan as a culture doesn't exist, okay? This is made up. I'm sorry, but this is actually made up. There's no such thing as Afghani culture. Just do a simple Google search. You know what? Let's do it together. Afghanistan. Let's see. What are the official languages of Afghanistan? Should be Pashtun, right? Yep, there you go. Pashtun, Tajik, Hazara, Uzbek, Aymak, Turkmen, Baluchi, other. Now, why did I show you the languages? Oh, but Ludi, culture is not language. Okay, buddy. Okay, calm the fuck down, buddy. If it's not language and it's just meant to be the territory of that kingdom, then what is this? Because there's no Afghanistan in 1337. Look at the map itself. The political map mode tells me this is the Kartids, and it's also divided. Not only Kartids, this is divided between 3 different countries. So 3 different countries, none of them being Afghanistan, because it didn't exist back then. The area maybe at some point started getting called as the Afghani area, but the peoples living there always been of different ethnic, linguistic, and cultural background, majority of which were the Pashtuns. And I'm kind of saying this because honestly it's kind of disappointing to not see the Pashtuns depicted as Pashtun, because Pashtuns, historically speaking, have been brushed aside and people don't even know that Pashtun people exist, which is wild because there's a massive majority of them in 2 countries, not just in Afghanistan but also in Pakistan. There's a lot of Pashtun. And then if we have Tajiks, which is the second majority of people, both ethnic and culturally speaking, in Afghanistan. Why do we have Afghans? So Afghan is supposed to be Pashtun? Just call them Pashtun. That's the English word for them. It's Pashtun. It's not Afghan, man. Oh my god, brother. That's the only gripe I have about the cultural map mode. Everything else, I don't know. I guess it's okay. If you guys are from here, you know better than me. I'm curious what you think about it. The region itself has about 9 million population, with 4.5 in Iran, 2 million in Iraq, 1.5 in the Caucasus, 1.5 in Transnistria. Some of you, I noticed in the comment section, asked me about this. Is this accurate? I think it is, because remember that just 100 years prior, the Mongols came and they wiped out half of the population in this entire region. So not only that, the development would be very low because a lot of the cities were completely wiped out. There were literally pyramids of skulls made by the Mongols for the cities that did not surrender, or for the cities that even did surrender but they still wanted to do it. Anyway, the point is that the Mongols were horrible and they wiped the entire area, put them back to the Stone Ages for the first 50 years, and the next 50 years to reach 1337, I guess, they would still be just barely out of the Stone Ages from an economic and prosperity perspective. Because once you have half of a population dying, it's really hard to recover from that. It literally takes a lot more than 100 years. Hope you guys enjoyed this dev diary. Love you all, and I'll see you in the next one.